Calls for unity cooled quickly as the now House Intel Chairman Adam Schif made his first big move tonight, announcing a sweeping investigation into President Donald Trump and voting to turn the transcripts of the congressional interviews with Donald Trump Jr. and Hope Hicks and others over to the special counsel Robert Mueller for cross-checking, wasting no time firing back from the president.
He's just a political hack who's trying to build a name for himself, and I think that's fine because that's what they do. But there would be no reason to do that. No other politician has to go through that. It's called presidential harassment, and it's unfortunate, and it really does hurt our country.
Joining me now, former prosecutor and Congressman, Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy. Good to see you tonight, Trey. Thanks for being here. I also want to put up a tweet by Adam Schif and get your thoughts on this. He says, I can understand why the idea of a meaningful oversight terrifies the president. Several of his close associates are going to jail. Others await trial, and criminal investigations continue. We're going to do our job and won't be distracted or intimidated by threats or attacks, he writes. What say you, sir?
I just wish Adam would be intimidated by the facts. The 2 years that I worked with him on the Russia probe, Adam was wrong about collusion. Remember, he said he had evidence that was more than circumstantial but not quite direct, that the president colluded with Russia. He was wrong about Donald Trump Jr. and who he called before and after the meeting at Trump Tower. Adam has also leaked incorrect information to media outlets. I wish Adam were serious about oversight. There's a lot that needs to be done in the intelligence community about leaks, about FISA. He's not interested in that. He is interested in undoing the 2016 election results. And he needs facts for that. And so far, his intimidation has only been by that.
You know, I mean, it's interesting to me because as you point out, he said early on that he had seen evidence that there was collusion. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, you know, I mean, none of us know what is in the Mueller report, but I wonder what his response is going to be if they don't find collusion. You know, nobody knows what else they might see in there. But I mean, how's he going to react, and where's his evidence going to be if indeed that report disappoints him?
I just hope he's asked. I mean, I'll just settle for someone in the D.C. print media asking Adam a follow-up question. He said he had evidence of collusion between Russia and President Trump before Bob Mueller was ever appointed. He had evidence of collusion before anybody else did, according to Adam Schif. So why is he not constantly asked, as a Republican would be and should be, if you claim you have evidence, direct evidence of collusion, what is it? And he's either not asked or he's not forced to respond. Yeah,
and if that's the case, I think, you know, most of America would certainly like to know what happened, because everybody would certainly want to know that if that was indeed the case. In terms of Mr. Nadler, Congressman Nadler, who is heading up the committee, and he is asking for Mark Whitaker, the acting attorney general, who's coming in on February 8th to testify about why or why not, you know, what his process was on not recusing himself from the Russia investigation when he became acting attorney general. Then they said they were going to subpoena him also, even though he said he was going to come and talk to them.
Yeah, there are three reasons that Jerry Nadler did that. Number one, so you and I would be talking about it, and others would be talking about the acting AG being under subpoena. Number two, it does compel attendance, but Matt's already said he's coming. Thirdly, and importantly, and what I don't think your viewers know, is when Matt says, I can't answer that question because it's privileged, I can't answer that question because it's an ongoing investigation, if you're under subpoena, it makes it much easier for the committee to compel you to answer. That's why they're doing it. They're not worried about him not showing up. He's already said he's coming. Although, Martha, I hope he doesn't. He's going to be the AG for about another week. He's got about another week, so he's certainly not going to talk about his vision for the Department of Justice. He can't talk about Mueller. He can't talk about Rosenstein. He can't talk about any ongoing investigation, and he can't talk about communications he's had with the president. So what's he going to talk about? He's not going to be there in a week. So, look, Matt's got access to much better legal minds than mine, but I think I'd have a cold Friday if I were him. And then by this time next week, Bill Barr will have been confirmed, and he can come answer all of Jerry Nadler's questions. But Whitaker's got, what, a week left on the job?
Good point. Good point. Trey Gowdy, thank you very much. Good to see you as always, sir. See you next time. Trey Gowdy is a close friend of Senator Scott. They literally wrote a book together about unifying the political divide, and he joins me now. Congressman, good to see you. Great to have you with us tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you listen to that intro and, this idea that anyone who wears a Make America Great hat is basically, running into the same kind of buzzsaw that happened in your state over the Confederate flag, for example, and that the president is seen by Democratic candidates as a racist and called that on a daily basis.
I'm just stunned that folks can look into other people's hearts. I've never tried to do it. I don't assign motives to people. I like Juan Williams, but he just used the phrase war on civil rights. That is incredibly charged language, particularly if you're a person of color and you hear that a party has a war on civil rights. You mentioned Tim Scott and his reference to unemployment and underemployment being down. He's also the author of something called Opportunity Zones. It was Republicans who passed criminal justice reform, Republican House, Republican Senate, signed by a Republican. So Timmy's exactly right. We need to talk about policy. The rhetoric coming from some Republicans is indefensible. It should be categorically rejected. But when I look at the Republican Party, I see Tim Scott and I see Elise Stefanik. I don't see Steve King.
Well, when you look at, you talk about looking into someone's heart. I was going through some of the notes from when I talked to Senator Scott, and he essentially, he was asked about Jeff Sessions and why he didn't come out and condemn him more forcefully over the issue of separation of families and all that. He said, because I took the time to get to know him, and I don't believe that what is being said about him is accurate.
I was with Tim. Tim told then Senator Sessions, I'm not going to vote for you unless you come to Charleston. I was at the table. There were ministers of color. There were law enforcement officers of color. And Tim was not going to support him until he knew in his well of souls that this is somebody who understands the plight, or at least makes the effort to understand the plight of black and brown people. So that is not rhetoric from Tim Scott. He actually did it. I was at the table. This is what Republicans, I think, need to come to grips with. And this is advice that I got from a Democrat.
Yeah.
Luis Gutierrez is who told me this. People will vote for you if they don't like you. They'll never vote for you if they think you don't like them. So the policies, the Tim Scotts, the Elise Stefaniks, the new generation of Republicans, they're doing great. But we have to be very mindful of the rhetoric that we use and the rhetoric that we condone on the Republican side, or we will continue to struggle in the communities of color in this country electorally.
What do you see when you look into the eyes of the boy from Covington High School and the Native American elder?
I see what happens when the media decides to make something viral. They could have picked a lot of things that happened over this weekend, including lots of examples of my fellow citizens being kind and generous and considerate to one another. That just doesn't go viral. It doesn't make the news. I don't know either of the people in this video. I honestly, because I don't know them, I could care less what they think about almost any issue that impacts our country. So at least take the time to get to know someone before you assign motives or assign what is in their heart. I just think it's a sad reflection on where we are politically and media-wise that something like this would dominate the news cycle and not examples of my fellow citizens being considerate and kind to one another, because that far outpaces anything like what was represented in that video.
She was afforded an opportunity that we have under our alternative prosecutions unit, that in exchange for the community service and his bond forfeiture, the case would be dropped.
She lost her voice and her integrity. All right, how does one get a spot in the alternative prosecutions unit line? All right, let me guess. You're rich, you're privileged, you're an actor, and you share the political beliefs of the state's attorney, who, by the way, did not formally recuse herself. Joining us now, I'm delighted he's with us. John Yoo, John, of course, from Berkeley and former Bush Justice Department. What do you think about this? I mean, Rahm Emanuel suddenly is like, put the brakes on. Oh, no. President Trump, go to opening baseball. Cute.
First of all, I think a lot of Americans, myself included, are outraged by this. The fact that this guy faked a hate crime. Look, I'm a minority. You're a woman. What if we were to be attacked legitimately? And now we're going to be less believed by police and prosecutors because of the example of this guy. I think that's terrible. I think a lot of Americans realize something ought to be done. Second, this is why we have a U.S. Justice Department. Okay, maybe they just spent a lot of time investigating President Trump to no good effect. But now they actually exist to make sure there is no corruption going on in state government. If you look at the details of this case where Mrs. Obama's chief of staff calls the prosecutor, Kim Foxx, and then all of a sudden these machinations occur and then the case gets dropped, that is exactly what the Justice Department is supposed to be involved in, is to make sure that there's no corruption in state government. So I hope that President Trump is right and that the FBI are starting an investigation to look into this.
What's the potential criminal exposure here, both for Fox and for the state's attorney office itself? So
Fox could be potentially liable for what's called mail and wire fraud of depriving citizens of their honest services, which, if she's convicted, right, this is the standard law that's used to go after corrupt state officials. Suppose she got a bribe. Suppose she was promised a fundraiser, or who knows what other kind of influence to drop this case. The maximum sentence is 20 years in prison.
Why do you think Rahm Emanuel took that turn?
This takes a conspiratorial mindset.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have the right one, but Chicago politics, these are all people who are interconnected. They all worked in the Obama administration or are working for the Obamas now. And for Chicago city officials, doesn't it look like there's some kind of pressure deal being made to make this all go away?
It's very, also Smollett himself, does he have any exposure under federal criminal law?
Oh, yeah, his story's not over. Even though the case under state law could be dropped, he can still be prosecuted under federal law. So he used the internet, again, mail and wire fraud, to engage in a conspiracy to defraud, namely the people he's engaging in contract negotiations with, to defraud the people of Chicago, the city of Chicago. Plus, remember, he did this crazy thing before where he mailed himself fake chemical weapons. Right? He mailed himself a white powder, claimed it's anthrax, tried to report that to the police. That's actually a federal crime, is to create a hoax about using chemical weapons.
I don't think anyone understands this until you just said this. I really don't think anyone on television has explained it that clearly. But this is not unserious stuff. This is not just laugh about it. No, this is really, isn't this funny? This liberal actor kind of, it has to maybe pay $130,000. Whoop-de-doo, $130,000.
And I don't think Michelle Obama can call the Attorney General Bill Barr and get the charges dropped.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. John, it's always great seeing you.
Thanks.
Thanks for stopping by when you're in town.